This Week in Startups is brought to you by Design Crowd. Best custom graphic, logo, and web designs for your business. Get $100 off your design project at designcrowd.com/twist or enter promo code TWIST. And Squarespace. Start building your website today at squarespace.com. Enter offer code TWIST at checkout to get 10% off.
Hey everybody, welcome to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis, and it has been a crazy news week here in the cradle of technology, San Francisco. But I would like to say our hearts and our thoughts go out to the tragedy, the families and the victims of the tragedy in Orlando. It's absolutely horrific, and obviously everybody out here is talking about it and thinking about it. And as a country, I've written a little bit about it. I hope that the two polar opposite sides of the debate, the people who want no guns and the people who want no restrictions on guns, can maybe move to the center where I think the majority of us all live and find a resolution that maybe saves some lives. And so our hearts go out to everybody who lost loved ones. And I think as a country, we can all do a little bit better. So maybe we'll have to be a little introspective, and maybe we all don't have to agree on every point, but maybe we can come to a resolution on this one, which is we don't want to have these insanely powerful rifles available to everybody at all times. Okay. I don't know if anybody wants to add to that other than, my God, this is like horrific that we just keep dealing with this every couple of weeks.
Well, I mean,
I second what you said.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. I mean, I think the only tech thing I would say is I feel like when these things happen, Silicon Valley is like, oh, why can't Washington fix it? And we need to take a sort of like, how can we campaign to make the changes that we think the government needs to make? And it's a very sort of like, we leave it to Washington sort of.
We're sort of
stance.
hands off
when
it comes to hard issues as an industry.
Right, yes.
We lack backbone on the tough issues.
Yeah, I think that can be true sometimes, yeah.
What do you think, Kitty?
Like at the Code conference, Elon Musk was talking about how he's going to colonize Mars, which is fantastic. But when asked about, what he wants to do vis-a-vis this election, he said, well, there's nothing I can do there. And it's like, well, if you can get us to Mars, you really can't proffer up an opinion on whether or not we should vote for Trump or Hillary. That's interesting.
That's very interesting. And let me just take a moment to welcome our guest, Katie Banner. Is the reporter from the New York Times. That's the female voice you hear. And Eric Newcomer is with Bloomberg, formerly of The Information, which we'll talk a little bit about the Jessica discussion we had last week. In the third segment of the show, we're going to go LinkedIn, Gawker bankruptcy, and then we'll talk a little bit about the back and forth I had with Jessica in the third segment. Yeah, it is. It actually came up last episode where I said, and Elon Musk, Larry Page, Sheryl Sandberg, all MIA in talking about Trump. And I think one of the issues is the country's so polarized and these people own business to consumer products.
Yep.
And they're really afraid after what happened with the right being so upset about the thumb on the scale with the Facebook trending topics, that even the mighty Zuckerberg, worth $50 billion, with the largest, widest reach of any product on the planet, I believe. I don't think there's any product, maybe Coca-Cola, that reaches 1.5 billion people. Probably Coca-Cola or McDonald's might come close, but certainly not on the frequency or with the depth or with the impact. Has nothing to say about the actual issues.
Right, I think the Facebook debate is the perfect one to bring up, because I think their stance is algorithms are neutral and therefore totally apolitical. And I think the thing...
Do you buy that?
No, I think...
Hell no.
No stance is a stance. Like that, I think, is what we need to be sort of saying over and over again, pounding the table on. If Facebook's not going to prioritize certain voices, or if they're going to sort of let debate sort of, happen on their platform in a certain way, they have to own that. And they can't just say, oh, we create the platform that totally sorts what comes up and what doesn't, and yet sort of say it's an apolitical stance.
That's a ridiculously short-term view, too, because if you are that powerful and have that much influence, you're worried about what, a momentary blip in your stock price when 20 years from now, history is going to look back and say, look at all these really powerful people who did absolutely nothing. Like,
it's
that's
pathetic.
what's more important.
Yeah,
the only CEO in Silicon Valley who I think doesn't take that view is probably Tim Cook, who's already told investors who've gotten upset with him about his stance on the environment or his stance on human rights. He said, well, then you can sell my stock. So,
right.
He's kind of the only executive who's come out and said that.
Yeah.
And I respect him for that.
Well, I think perhaps as a gay man who maybe had to be in the closet for the majority of his life, he understands the value of standing up for what you believe in and the cost of other people not standing up for what's right. Whereas it's very easy for Zuckerberg or myself or Elon Musk or Sheryl Sandberg, cis white men and or privileged white women, to just say, hey, I'm not going to wade into this pool because we always get absolutely demolished.
And I have these great talking points someone made for me. I'm going to stick to those.
It's like touching the third rail. And here's the thing: if Zuckerberg's position is, I want a more open society, and I believe in immigration, then he is not only within his right, but he is morally obligated to then follow up to Trump's position on immigration and every other candidate's.
Right.
You can't have it both ways. You can't say that you're connecting the world, come work for me, buy my stock, the world's going to be better because it's connected.
Right.
And then say, we have somebody with 50% of the vote, or something in that range, 50% of the popular vote, who is saying deport everybody, not let certain religions into the country, and build walls. Zuckerberg's reason to exist is to tear down walls. It's hypocritical, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, in the trending topic debate specifically, I would just say, one of the issues at hand is what types of outlets he prioritizes. Right. You know what I mean? And I think, it is reasonable for Facebook to say these are news outlets and these are sort of gossip, opinion, sort of right-wing, sort of disconnected from reality publications. And ultimately, we think they create a worse experience in the feed, so we're going to deprioritize them.
So if we would take something like Breitbart, which has majority opinion, and devalue it, and then something like the New York Times, which has a lot of original reporting, and move it up.
Right.
What do you think of that, Katie?
Vested interest.
Let me take the New York Times out of there. The Wall Street Journal, which has original reporters, and Breitbart, which does opinion. It happens to be an opinion that's popular with the majority of Americans, or at least close to the majority. Do you think, Katie, that Facebook should actually sort down opinion and sort up actual journalism?
I think it depends on the experience they tell users that they are giving them. So if they say to users, coming to your Facebook feeds means you'll be informed and it means you'll get a lot of news, then yes, that's exactly what they should do. But if they say coming to Facebook means we're going to spark debate and we want to give you things that are controversial that will make you think, well, then they should be putting those opinions up. But they haven't been clear about what experience they say they're providing because they hide behind this, but the algorithm is neutral sort of thing.
Right, and it's just so obvious to the right and to the left that they're lying. I mean, it's so obvious.
It's inherent to any decision. They're making the decision, so they're taking a stance.
I mean, Google tried this, ridiculous thing when they said for SEO, the algorithm decided it. We didn't push Yelp down and push Google, Google's horrific local product up when Marissa was there.
You can actually feel Jeremy Stoppelman's head explode, somewhere in the universe, the ripples.
No, I mean, he was so correct. It's like they literally had to do a study. The competitors of Google did a study to show that consumers hated and got less from the results that Google was putting up than they were getting from Yelp, because Yelp had hundreds of reviews for local businesses, and they had none, or 3 or 4 that were poorly written.
I agree.
We all agree.
Yeah.
We're all in agreement. All right, let's move on to the... Oh, good. You said so. I want to know what's after the so, Katie. I'm not letting a hanging so.
Oh, I'm excited for when you have Mark, Sheryl, and Elon on your show to grill them.
Probably not going to happen. Sheryl came close to doing an interview with me. And we almost had that happen, not this year at the event, but a year ago at Launch Festival. Came very close. It was a lot of discussions. Her people, she said she wanted to do it. Her people said no.
You don't really hold back. I don't know. If I were one of her minders, I don't know if I'd be like, oh.
I think there's probably... Let me say this. If you look at the interviews I've done with important people, they've always been amongst the best interviews those people have done.
Okay.
And there's never been any gotcha in there. There have been candid discussions.
Sure.
But there's never been a Mike Arrington, FU session back and forth. I try to keep it classy and try to keep it on topic, but discuss the hard topics. With Elon, he actually was booked to speak at 1 or 2 of our events, or agreed to, and then he had some things that, he had to be in a different country for the auto show in Germany. So that's a possibility. And with Zuckerberg, probably never going to happen.
Very controlled at this point.
Yeah, when people get escape velocity, they're only going to speak with people who they're certain are going to use kid gloves. And I'm not saying that, there's going to be kid gloves at the code conference, but I think
Aren't you or are you?
Well, I will say this, that it's clubby.
Yep.
And it's clubby for a reason. If it's not clubby and it's not a boondoggle and it's not, everybody's going to be treated, they'll ask the hard question, but they'll never ask the hard follow-up question. That's the way I'll say it.
Yeah, you were there.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, that's what it felt like. It felt kind of like Christian summer camp or something. You get your hugs and everyone's there, and you haven't seen one another in a year, and it's so great. And
it's pretty much what it is. Listen, I host. Everybody knows I host the poker game there. That's not supposed to be occurring. I'm obviously involved. I've been going for a long time, so I don't want to speak derogatory of it. But let's just be honest. If you are
how'd the poker game go?
How'd you do in that poker game?
I don't want to talk about it.
Chamath,
I don't want to
outplay you a little bit.
I'm doing incredibly for this year, but I don't want to talk about that specific game. It was very dark.
When they come to repo the mics in the middle of the show.
All right, when we get back from the, I'm going to do a quick commercial break.
He's cutting the commercial.
I'm going to cut to commercial because I, number one, don't want Kara Swisher to give me a hard time. No, I think, listen, Kara was known for doing incredibly hard interviews with people and being almost grating with them.
Yeah.
To the point at which it made people in the audience uncomfortable. Actually, there was a big volley of complaints maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, I think that's awesome.
That she was just they actually had a quote that she was going to rip the gonads off of Bucus when he came on stage. They did this little video vignette where they're she's going to rip his balls off, that's literally what they said during this little vignette. And it was this big head-to-head that was going to occur. She was going to demolish him. And, Kara, to her credit, has access. But the way you maintain access in our industry is by not cutting people too hard.
Right. But you can sort of see who her people are, is what I'd say.
Oh, yeah.
Thiel, which we'll talk about later, I mean, she's been going after him. Hard to believe he's a great confidant of hers. But then the people that are, you can sort of...
Well, he's gay. She's gay.
Okay.
I think that means there is a little esprit de corps there, where I think actually she has access to him and probably...
Oh, really? She's been going at him pretty tough.
I think she's going at him hard, but I think that there is some common ground there. Will there be willing to talk about it because of the issue of outing people, which I think is something that just transcends the whole story that we're talking about, which is this whole story would have never happened. It was the big discussion last week. If a gay man working for a gay man didn't out another gay man. And nobody wants to sort of bring up at the core of this whole thing is a publisher who had essentially a jihad to out gay men with perhaps inappropriate term given what's going on right now, but he was on the warpath.
Yeah.
Is the word I'm looking for. So he's on the warpath to out gay men at Gawker. It was literally a sport for them. Anderson Cooper, Tim Cook. I mean, they went at it hard. At a time where, by the way, outing somebody could have incredible and negative consequences on their life. Owen Thomas, an out gay man. I would say Nick was a reluctantly out gay man. He downplayed it a lot. You would not know he was gay unless you spent time with him or, saw him at a gay club kind of thing. So the whole thing of Nick Denton being out at that time, he was just barely out. Barely. In fact, the Wired article about his profile said he is they phrased it he is a discreetly out gay man. Owen Thomas was very much out of the closet, and I think he took a lot of sport in outing gay men and thought it was on a political basis an act of something good for the world. And that's something that's, I think, if this story would not exist, without.
Can I throw? Do you want to keep fighting this one, or can I respond to that? Or
when we get back from this commercial break, Eric and I are going to hetero-explain. Katie, you can. While we're hetero,
I'm gonna cringe.
While we hetero mansplain, we'll let you actually be the final arbiter of our stupidity. And I'm assuming you're straight, Eric.
Yeah.
So I'll let you explain to us, Katie, how meaningless our opinion is on all this when we get back on This Week in Startups.
That's great.
I actually kind of am self-aware enough to say that All right, listen, it's been a very controversial week, but here's something that's not controversial at all. That is Design Crowd. Design Crowd, you can go visit at designcrowd.com/twist. Everybody agrees that it is an awesome way to do your next logo, custom graphic, or web design for your business. Visit designcrowd.com/twist. That's DESIGNCROWD.com, designcrowd.com, and you will save up to $100 on your design project. It is an online marketplace to outsource or crowdsource, as you know, your custom designs. They have 500,000 registered designers from around the world, and it works really simple. You post a brief. What do you want? And then you receive at least 60 to 100 different designs per submission. And these designs are amazing. And you select which ones you like best. You approve payment to the designer. And you, of course, have a money-back guarantee. Harvard Business School, Virgin, HTC, Absolute Vodka, Amnesty International, which was my first job actually working at Amnesty International, plus 100,000 small businesses and entrepreneurs like me, Jason Calacanis. I have a contest going up in July. All use the service and love it. So visit designcrowd.com/twist and save up to $100 on your next design project. I'm good at reading ads, right? I mean, I may be horrible as a host. My opinions may be inane. Katie, what do you think about? I'm going to start with you, Katie. It was a pretty good ad read, right?
So good.
Even the segue in. Ridiculous. I actually use my segues as like cringeworthy. I'm trying to do like the most ridiculous ones. But Katie, this outing of gay men at the core of this, how much do you think that played into Peter Thiel's hurt and or vengeance in this whole, Shakespearean Gawker, Thiel play we're watching? I mean, Shakespearean is probably the only thing I can use to describe it.
Yeah, so not being Peter Thiel's therapist, I can't really go into how much that played into his decision to wage a secret, nearly decade-long war against Gawker. But there is the question of why wouldn't confronting Nick Denton and Owen Thomas have been a more satisfactory thing for him?
Confronting how?
Calling up and saying, I think what you've done is wrong. I want you to pull the story. These are the reasons why, and having a dispute.
I wonder if that might have actually occurred.
And I don't know. Well, Owen Thomas said it didn't. And so I believe Owen.
Okay, I believe him.
I think
on his
Owen's a straight shooter. I think he said that he actually heard back from people who are friends of Thiel's who said that he didn't care about the story one way or another. So I do kind of
which
wonder,
is what somebody hurt would say, but
right. So I do kind of wonder why, again, a secret, expensive, nearly decade-long fight to destroy your enemy is a better course of action than having an upfront dispute and argument.
Let me ask you a question. As a professional journalist working at one of the most professional, if not the most professional institution historically, how would you look at the releasing of stolen sex tapes? How would you look at the outing of gay men, and how would you look at, just on a personal basis as a journalist, just dealing in stolen products like they did with the iPhone? So it's really three different, and also printing rumors without fact-checking them, just printing them and then letting the story sort of evolve from it. So there's really four things I can point at as really hard infractions. One is printing these rumors without getting actual verification. Two is stolen sex tapes and publishing them. Three is outing gay men. And four is paying for stolen property like the stolen iPhone. Sure. How would you address each of those four yourself personally as a journalist? Would you do each of those, yes or no?
Well, before I do that, I want to mention something that Jeff Bezos said at the Code Conference that I thought was really reframed the discussion for a lot of people. That to live in the democracy that we live in, with the values that we have, with the freedom of the press that we cherish, I hope, for a free press and a working democracy, we have to protect ugly speech, not beautiful speech.
Sure.
Most of the time, a publication like the Wall Street Journal or Newsweek or the New York Times or Bloomberg, we don't need First Amendment protections in that vigorous way because we have great editing and we're creating beautiful story, what would be considered beautiful and thoughtful and thought-provoking speech. Mm-hmm. It's the ugly stuff, the tabloid stuff that we protect so that there's a great barrier around the fact that people are allowed to express their opinions.
So you don't agree with those behaviors, but you'll protect them so that there is not incrementalism and
yes.
It eventually comes to your beach.
Yes.
Head.
And when I go through the list that you just gave me, no, we don't publish rumors, nor would I. I mean, very rarely do I think a rumor is something that I need to publish. I understand following it, chasing it, and tracking it down to see if there's a bigger story there. Publishing, probably no. Sex tapes, New York Times just doesn't deal in sex tapes, and I'm lucky enough to have never seen one, so I'm going to try to keep it that way.
Not missing much, by the way. Celebrities are just as awkward as the rest of us.
Oh, that's horrible to think about. So I'm, again, moving right along. Outing people. So again, I've spoken with Owen, and he really argues that he feels in his heart of hearts that he did not out Thiel.
Okay. But they certainly outed other people.
But they did out.
Sure.
Including the Condé Nast CFO.
And that's something I've been at a variety of publications where, the sexual preference of different executives has come up in editorial discussions, and we've walked back from it and said, we're a business publication. So this is not, unless it becomes material to the business, we don't have to discuss this. So Tim Cook's a great example. I think for a long time, people wondered about Tim Cook's sexuality. But when I was at Fortune, it was, all right, well, unless this becomes material to Apple, or Cook himself wants to take that on as a leadership position, which he eventually did, it was just not a place we felt we needed to go.
Stolen iPhone.
Now, I've never paid for evidence before for a story. I would... Probably.
Nor could you,
Nor could I. I think I would be swiftly fired. But it's a common tabloid practice.
Right. But you don't agree with it. Okay.
I wouldn't.
Eric, to you with those 4 items, and obviously I know you want to check in on the outing issue.
Yeah.
Outing, unethical, ethical, abhorrent, other. What? How do you look at it as a cis white male of privilege, with a Brooks Brothers blue blazer?
I grew up in Macon, Georgia, with a gay parent. So I think I come at it. And I think it was pretty well known where I grew up. And I think it's just a political thing here. Like, I think the execs in Silicon Valley just don't want to think of themselves as political figures. But, the argument was that Silicon Valley is the perfect meritocracy. And I think part of what was being pointed out is if it's such a perfect meritocracy and you're at the top of it and you can't live openly as a gay man, what's that say about the meritocracy? I mean, that's part of sort of what Owen... I think Nick's case would be. It's that it matters, and then in addition to that the other argument is Silicon Valley is super clubby, and that everybody here knew, and that you could all talk about it. Now, I wasn't here at the time, but I think there is a strong case where there are things that everyone knows, and Gawker's job is basically to say, wait, if everybody here is allowed to talk about it, why can't sort of the regular person get in that debate? And so I sort of agree with Owen. If what his characterization of how well known it is. It was
a dark time for Gawker and Owen, I think, at that time when he was a journalist there. They would frequently print anything that came into the tip box. I related the story a couple of times, and even on CNBC. I sent a fake tip to them about my next project to sort of send them off the trail. They printed it without ever calling me, without ever checking the facts.
They create this space for good journalism is what that's sort of how I argue about it.
Unpack
it. There are always tabloids. There are always public. Like, I wouldn't work for them. I work for Bloomberg because I believe in sort of reputation, credibility, authority. What? I have considered at various points. I would never rule it out, but I am
Everything's on the table.
I went a certain direction purposefully, not accidentally.
You were recruited by Gizmodo or Lifehacker?
No, I just met with Katie's making lots of faces and getting me in
trouble.
Katie
has the inside information here. So you turned down an offer to be the editor-in-chief.
No, there was nothing that specific.
Well, I mean, actually, you would be the prototypical recruit for Nick. He likes young, aggressive, talented writers who he can then push to do things that later in life they would realize is a mistake.
He's like Voldemort.
He literally has a Darth Vader-esque quality to him, which is he seduces young writers by giving them a massive platform.
Before they know anything.
Before they know anything.
Right.
And it's just like they literally wind up leaving there and then apologizing to all their subjects and trying to clean up the damage they did to their own reputations and disavowing stories.
But they also have great stories that they look back on.
Of course. Here's the thing about that. Yeah. I think that's probably the weakest argument of all. That's like saying, I didn't murder anybody the other 364 days of the year, so can I get credit for that? Doesn't matter that you were a great person for 364 days of a year. If you murder somebody on the 365th, you're guilty of murder. So if you outed the CFO of Condé Nast and tried to destroy his life by enabling a prostitute to...
Blackmailer.
a blackmailer.
It's bad.
By
It's
the
bad.
way,
It's bad.
you get judged on that, not the other 999
I think
posts you did that year.
well,
and so you have to own your worst moments in life.
I don't accept that frame. I think there are certainly some sort of things that you can do that you can't come back from. But then I think with something like a media publication, you have to look at sort of the net good of what they do. And if sort of running some rumors and sort of playing fast and loose means that you're driving the conversation in productive ways, you're opening up debate where it wasn't otherwise, like that's helpful. And if sometimes that gets you into trouble, then I think people need to look at the good too.
Katie, we like good Gawker, but we wish bad Gawker would stop. If we looked at these as like Goofus and Gallant, like there's this like little, Jekyll Hyde, we would rather they not do these like edge case behaviors.
Of course. It's like the National Enquirer. They ran lots and lots of stories that people really wish they hadn't run, but then they hit the jackpot with, Edwards.
Yep.
John Edwards, right.
With John Edwards.
Right.
So do we wish they hadn't written all of those other stories? Of course.
Right.
But sometimes they do hit the mark.
Okay, when we get back from this commercial break, I'll just I'll address the Jessica Lessin debate we had back.
Walk out while that happens?
Well, actually, let me address it now then, because I want to make sure people understand my position on all this. This is one of the few places in Silicon Valley where actual real talk occurs.
I agree.
And it's incredibly candid, incredibly blunt, and we're known for that. And I made my bones in the industry by being blunt. Now, as a blunt individual and someone who was a former journalist and does random acts of journalism and or analysis, even as an angel investor, I myself confront massive conflict. I comment on Uber and Thumbtack. I am an investor in these companies. I am friends with a lot of the top people. I've been for many years. So I am massively conflicted, but I'm always disclose that conflict. And I own it. And then people can make a decision for themselves. When I have somebody on, or I'm talking about Uber, or I'm talking about Thumbtack, an investment, or a friend, it all comes into play, and I'm very upfront about that. Now, Jessica did not storm out of the show. Jessica is a great friend of the show, a great guest. I respect her greatly. I think she's a tremendous journalist, and you worked for her.
She's great. We love her.
There's no downside to Jessica. I think she's great. I think she's ethical, moral, and tremendous. Now, I'm starting to sound like Trump with this tremendous. I got to be careful. She's amazing. She's wonderful. The show is fantastic, and it's great. People have been asking me to do my Trump. I do it at the poker game for like an hour straight, and people just are like, please stop. I'm like, get used to it. It's going to be 8 years of it. Anyway. I just want to say, no, anyway, so she left the show, and people thought she left the show in a huff. No, the show was running late. She was a mensch and stayed 15 minutes later. We had agreed that she was going to leave after a segment. So she did not walk out on the show. She is not that type of person. Now, we did have a little back and forth about disclosures. And she was a little bit perturbed during that back and forth. Let's just play the back and forth so we can just clear the air about this. So we're all looking at it, Nelly, through the lens of, oh my God, am I going to personally get sued? Do I have to worry about this? Jessica's looking at it like, well, listen, Jessica's husband is rich, went to Facebook, she's friends with everybody in this community.
What are you talking about?
Well, whatever. I mean, you're a target because.
Back against.
Well, I think you're a target.
Like how you're painting me.
No,
I'm looking at it from the point that news organizations should be held to account.
You run a news organization.
Jessica point of view.
You run a news organization, but your husband worked at Facebook. It creates a complication for you.
Sure, but I was a reporter
before
before he worked at Facebook, and it's
Correct.
completely independent of all.
It's independent, except you guys play from the same chip stack, right?
But how does that affect my opinion on this case, which is that a media organization should be held to account? There's defamation, there's libel, there's a legal process, game over.
Absolutely. I think you have integrity, and I think your position is based on that. But you have to still suffer through the fact that people are always going to say in your reporting, she's friends with these people. She's worth millions of dollars because of these companies.
Very few people say that, Jason. You're saying this more than anyone's ever said this.
Actually, Jessica, I hear people say it all the time.
I think
essentially, to clear the air, I wasn't meaning that to insult Jessica in any way, and I'm watching it, and I'm pretty objective, I think, about my own behavior. I didn't think I would get that reaction from her. I thought she was very upfront about the fact that her net worth, her husband made a lot of money working for Facebook. And I hear people bring that up all the time in the context of whenever they do reporting on Facebook, it has to be addressed. Just like Pando Daily has to address the fact they have Thiel as an investor when they report on Thiel. I have to, and even the New York Times has, who's the Mexican billionaire? who owns the New York Times? Carlos Slim owns some large percentage of the New York Times.
Friend.
Exactly. So you can't talk about billionaires or Carlos Slim without disclosing that he's an owner in the New York Times, correct? We all have this. But what do you think of this exchange? And by the way, I apologize to her if it felt like I was too rough and tumble and have sharp elbows or something like that. That wasn't the intent. I was just trying to make a point that, like, when she reports on, because we're talking about the meta issue of conflicts, because we're talking about how the publications in Silicon Valley are soft on the companies.
I'd say,
right? Like, so there's this idea, we just talked about the clubbiness of, Kara Swisher runs a conference and you called it, Katie, like summer camp or something like that. So, and then with Jessica, there's this massive Facebook conflict. And in a way, it makes the information a better publication to read because you know she can sit down with Zuckerberg at any time or Sheryl or have access to those people.
Yeah.
But it also makes you think when she reports on Google or they report on Google or Facebook, is there some, I'm sure many people will look at that and say, okay, the person who owns this publication and runs it is in the Facebook camp and has profited from the Facebook camp. Does that play into it in any way? Just like if I read about Carlos Slim in the New York Times, I would think about, hey, Carlos Slim is an owner of this publication. Just like if Jeff Bezos is mentioned in the Washington Post, you have to take that into consideration, don't you?
I think.
Yeah, and I think this question came up too with Kara for years, and I think that people believe that Kara is still a good reporter and does a good job.
She recused herself from reporting on Google.
Stories. Yeah, and Eric and I both worked at The Information, and I think that I can say that we didn't feel that the fact that Jessica was married to Sam impacted what we were able to report in any way.
I feel like, the thing I would say, Silicon Valley gets obsessed with disclosure as sort of the end all be all, which is important. But I think the thing with Jessica is that if you know her, like, to her, the story is like fundamentally the most important thing.
She's like, win. She doesn't want,
she wants like the best story. So when people are like, oh, first of all, people way overemphasize the amount. It's like, she's tied in because Sam Lessin. Like, she's tied in because she's like Jessica Lessin, and
tremendous.
So I think
just like Kara Swisher is tied in because she's Kara Swisher.
That to me, that frustrates me more than anything. It's like, yeah, sure, she's tied in, but it's because she's, very aggressive and well-sourced and well-connected and all that. And certainly you should always ask questions about when sources end and friends start, and like people can ask that. But like the thing people should know about Jessica is that she's like a killer.
She's good at what she does. There's no doubt about it. If
The Information came up with a great story about Mark Zuckerberg committing fraud, she'd be like, well, we better get that first.
When I was there, I was writing about how Internet.org was not really that benevolent and was totally sort of their global sort of power acquisition long before India said that, it couldn't operate there. We had Dustin Moskovitz writing comments complaining about it. So I think we were really ahead on that issue. And I think that if there was a great critical Facebook story, they would love to write that story.
So the audience has it. Two former information writers. Absolutely, we're on the inside. Absolutely believe Jessica and The Information do an amazing job. I agree with them. And my only point in all of this, and I'm not apologizing or backtracking, is that when there is conflicts, we have to own them and be upfront about them. Sure. That's it.
I agree.
And so if it was a Washington Post reporter and we're talking about Jeff Bezos, that needs to come up right front and center. And the same thing is true if, Katie, you were doing a story about, I don't know, Carlos Slim or billionaires. I think there actually was a story about billionaires that didn't mention Carlos Slim, and you guys got decimated about it.
Yep.
And it was probably, what did the public editor say? Did the public editor address it?
I don't remember what Margaret said.
Yeah. So anyway, we can pull it up later. But anyway, also, journalism is not perfect.
No. That's why we have a public editor.
Right.
The public editor is not a friend, is not friendly within the New York Times. She's there, or she was, because she just left to go to the Post, but she was there to make sure that we were policed.
I loved reading her stuff. It's like the first thing I want to read. She was just great. The New York Times, a budsman. All right, listen. One thing that's not in dispute. You already used that segue, right? How do I do this?
Oh, is this another ad?
One thing, yeah, of course.
You have to keep doing. You have to make money, or I don't.
I actually don't. Actually, it's like kind of silly for me to be reading the partner ads now. I could just fund this myself. But the truth is, it keeps me honest in a way. Yeah. We have to have ratings and advertisements, and I actually like reading them. Here's the thing that I do have I'm very lucky, is we only take partners for the program if we or our portfolio companies use the product.
Okay.
So we have plenty of people call and they're like, do you wear this type of, underwear? Or do you smoke these type of e-cigarettes, or do you use?
It's like all these podcasts.
Like
have to
LifeLock
pretend
was an example.
Yeah.
Like the LifeLock one, and I don't mean to dog LifeLock or whatever, but I think that's probably a scam.
I don't even know what it is.
LifeLock is the thing where they check your credit and they protect you, I guess. But everybody was complaining about it. And then I did a search for the Better Business Bureau. It's just all complaints. And I was like, I really don't want to read an ad, even though Howard Stern and other people read ads for LifeLock all the time. I don't want to read an ad for something that is going to then blow up in my face, and then I have people saying, like, I used LifeLock and it was terrible or whatever. Or maybe it's great. I don't know about LifeLock anymore. But at the time, we turned it down because it was like, makes no sense. But Squarespace is something that makes a lot of sense. We use it for everything. Go check out the launchangelsummit.com, and you will see that we can build beautiful, gorgeous websites in a moment. And we can update them easily. You can create beautiful landing pages, websites, or online stores. It looks professionally designed. It's intuitive, easy to use. No coding is required. It's state-of-the-art tech. It's secure, it's stable, and it's trusted by millions. Some of the most respected brands in the world. So go ahead and start your free trial today. There is no credit card required, and that is a tell. If you require a credit card, you're probably not that sure of how good your product is. All the great products, no credit card is required, and Squarespace is included in that group. So you can get a free domain when you sign up for a year. That's great. And by the way, it's super affordable. In fact, I kind of would pay like 5 times as much for it. So when you decide to sign up for Squarespace, please use the offer code TWIST and you'll get 10% off your first purchase. Go ahead and use that code TWIST when you decide to sign up for Squarespace, and you'll get 10% off for your first purchase. It's easy. They're constantly adding new features. My whole team uses it. I use it for Launch Festival, for the Scale Conference, for Launch Incubator. Every website we do, we just, boom, we can throw up a Squarespace in 2 seconds, get the domain name, get it up and running, and put all these great features on it, and it looks gorgeous. That is the number one thing. And they're constantly putting out new templates and new designs, so you don't have to have a static, ugly website. And it's all responsive, obviously. So when you pull it up on a mobile phone or an iPad, it just looks great, and it just works. And all the people on your team are going to know how to use it. You're not going to be like looking for somebody on Craigslist to update your website for $500 an hour, and they don't return your email for 3 weeks. You're going to just open up the interface and change it, and it works. Just like using like a word processor. It's kind of that easy. Okay, thank you to Squarespace. Let's get back to the program. All right, so we've been through all the controversial stuff, I think. But at the end of the day, Gawker filed for bankruptcy now. And I think we can all agree, correct me if I'm wrong, that we may not want to live in a world where a billionaire can destroy publications to the point of putting them into bankruptcy.
It's pretty crazy.
It feels a little bit like surreal. I understand Peter trying to stop them from the bad behavior, but it seems like Peter's unrelenting lawsuits have actually changed behavior at Gawker. I believe that.
They were like, we're going to be 20% nicer, which is itself sort of terrifying given their whole value set.
Well, maybe not doing the CFO outing story. I think if Peter hadn't acted as a backstop, I don't think they would have pulled down that CFO outing story. And in fact, 2 of the top editors left in protest over that. So that shows you where they stand. The top editors of that publication were absolutely in favor of outing a married gay man and helping this gigolo or whatever you call it.
It's hard to understand. Gawker's a hard company to defend. I mean, it's Katie's whole point, right? It's the speech that you end up having to defend is often gross, and it puts you in a really frustrating situation. But we'll fight
also,
it.
Let's take a step back. You have a billionaire putting a publication out of business because he doesn't like what they write. And then you have another billionaire, Elizabeth Holmes, being found to be not a billionaire because there's worry that her entire company was fraudulent. Like, are we in 2016 or are we in 1916 or 1906 even? Like, so where are we in the state of the world where this is what is happening with money and power in a very specific industry?
It is bizarre.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're all forced to discuss the edge cases constantly, and the edge cases become the core issue. In gun control, and Donald Trump seems to be a master at leveraging this phenomenon where the edge case becomes the main case. But I think you said it beautifully. Like, the industry needs more policing. It needs more great journalism. It's being thwarted in a way. And then actually a lot of journalists, I think, are embracing the conflict and not even, caring about it. I mean, if Pando Daily raises money from venture capitalists, they obviously, wanted to be in bed with venture capitalists.
Yeah, I mean, but media is also looking for new business models, and that's what VCs do. So, I mean, I don't begrudge them from taking VC money.
It is weird, though, to take VC money if you're covering the VC industry. And now they've become so, like, anti-everything.
They've taken an interesting turn.
How so?
Haven't we already talked about, like, Kara, Jessica? Now
we're just going to write down trifecta here.
Like, no,
I mean, I do think that this is, we're talking, actually, the meta issue is policing of the truth and having investors as your, having an investor conflict, I guess, is how I would report on it.
I don't think...
Even without all of the conflicts of interest, there's a way in which reporting on the Valley becomes a very incremental job. It's scoops about fundraising and it's scoops about personnel. And so I think part of the issue isn't just, conflict. It's this idea that very, very seldom do reporters have the opportunity to step back, lift up their heads and look around and say, okay, well, now that I've been actively pursuing this story about Uber's latest fundraising, what is really happening with Uber and what is there that's larger to say about this company?
Right.
And so I think that, and I think that stymies, sort of great investigative or critical looks as much as anything else. Just the pressure to say, okay, well, is Thumbtack raising $40 million and what valuation? Because I'm competing with 8 people to get that. It's like, hey, that's just
I mean, the guy at the Journal who broke the Theranos story, I can never remember his name,
John Carreyrou.
He wasn't, this is said over and over again, but he wasn't a tech journalist. And
he didn't have those pressures.
People get fixated on the money, but I mean, just covering the beat, I was at a PR party last night. It's a relationship game over a long time. Like, some stories come from the companies, some come against the companies. I get punished when I write negative stories. Like, those
you get punished.
Oh my God.
The PR people will be vindictive.
The executives, all the directions.
I'll tell you the big...
Somebody once unfollowed Eric, and he got very upset.
No, I've been blocked by...
Mark Andreessen blocked you?
No, not even. No, this was pettier than that. It doesn't even matter.
Mark Andreessen's hilarious, though. Like, he blocked everybody. I'm friendly with Mark, and he's an LP in my fund. But it is funny how he
blocked you?
He blocked me, and he's an LP in my fund.
He doesn't like...
And I don't know if he blocked... I think it was because I was riding Theranos too hard or something, but he blocked everybody who was, like, anti-Theranos, and then he kind of...
Well, he backed away from that.
He backed away from that.
I'm sure Margaret was like, that's probably not a good long-term position. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's talk about the Theranos issue. There was big news... I think it was on Monday, Walgreens, as predicted on this show by John himself, has ended their relationship with Theranos, which was a very hard thing to do contractually, according to John, because Walgreens could have opened themselves up to massive lawsuits, and they had a very binding kind of contract. And I believe also they were an investor, but they're closing all 40 AZ testing centers. This comes after Theranos restated all of their blood tests in the largest, I think, act of restating blood tests. And this is only in Arizona. So they're I thought it was AZ was the branding of the, sorry, misread that. I thought AZ was the branding of it. It's the acronym for Arizona. So they closed their 40 Arizona tests, Arizona testing centers. And there was a doctor I read who said they would not have sent a person to the emergency room.
This is in the Journal story.
In the Journal story, they would not have sent the person to the emergency room had they not gotten these results.
That was the most terrifying. I put that in my newsletter.
I responded to it, and I was like, wow, that is, talk about burying the lead. Somebody got sent to the emergency room, and who knows what could have happened at that emergency room. I mean, the person could have been admitted. They could have been given a drug. They could have had surgery unnecessary. Who knows? I don't know what the exact case was. But this is exactly the worst fear we all had about Theranos, which is, gosh, if you're faking it till you make it, that's one thing with enterprise software. It's a whole nother ball of wax when it comes to healthcare, isn't it, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're just saying it over and over again. It's crazy. The media played a huge role. The venture capital industry played a huge role. Everybody sort of wanted to believe the story. And, now we're just going to watch it slowly unravel. I mean, this partnership was by far their most important. Everybody's talking about the company like it's over, and I think that's fair at this point.
Katie, what is your take on this slow motion train wreck? Is it going to zero? What does your gut tell you?
I mean, I don't see how it survives. And beyond Theranos, from about 2013 until probably Theranos began to unravel, there was this big push for non-technology companies to become partnered with or somehow work more closely with tech companies. Software was eating the world and everything was going to become technology. So Walgreens partnered with Theranos during that time and said, we need to become more technologically savvy.
Was that out of FOMO? Fear of missing out, as it were?
I think so. I definitely think so. And so what I wonder is, well, what other companies, what other sort of old line non-tech companies threw themselves into partnerships that they too will regret for companies that can't really deliver the things they thought they could?
Well, this will be the ultimate, I shouldn't even say this, but the GM Lyft debate. I'm not an investor. Certainly I take ride sharing every day and believe in it, but 5 years from now, you could see that looking either direction, right?
Well, it could be a bad investment, but there are not people taking a ride share are not putting their lives at risk in a way that blood tests are. Yeah,
I see that.
But it could be the edge case because lives were in danger. But I think that the sort of broader narrative of FOMO pressuring an old line company to make an investment it shouldn't or make a partnership it shouldn't. Now that's something that can still be examined without lives being in danger.
And the number 2 guy at Theranos left. We talked about it on the show. I wish we had that clip queued up. But when I talked to John about it, John and I were both being hit up with that guy was going to leave and that he was in a relationship with Elizabeth. And there was some Svengali kind of stuff going on. So talk about rumors and craziness. Yeah. But there has been a lot of talk of that and a lot of people speculating. But he left. What does him leaving say about all this? Because he was her mentor in some way. He discovered her or helped her raise all this money, and then he left, and he was running the lab.
I think at this point, the question is just like, how much money do they have in their bank account, and what are they going to do with it, and do the investors have any way of pulling it back? Because the company is not going to work. You're a medical company that's taken so much brand damage. I'm not a brand expert, but even if all this stuff at this point wasn't even true, even if they didn't actually have problems, like the reputational damage that they've taken at this point is so large that I don't see how a medical company comes back.
Who would ever go to a Theranos blood center at this point?
Most people had no idea what Theranos did, and now they just know that Theranos, the brand, is damaged, and they still don't really know what Theranos did.
In related news, our latest sponsor that nobody can doubt is Madoff Financial Advisors. If you can trust your money anywhere, it's with Madoff Advisors. Go to MadoffAdvisors.com/twist and receive your first $1 million.
Only products we use and love.
And I am a huge Sunny Balwani left the company. All right. And by the way, just to put like a little sort of final dot in the Theranos story, which I'm really tired of talking about because we've been on it for 6 months on this show. It's pathetic. It's gross. It's the worst reaction I've ever seen to a crisis by a CEO. Elizabeth Holmes is a disgrace for the way she handled this, attacking listen, I'm going to be candid here, but attacking the press when you are so in the wrong, even if you have a semblance of a chance to turn the company around and maybe there's something in your technology, the behavior that you exhibited as leader of the company and the way you fought against the journalists and told them that they were wrong, when in fact you had to restate all those tests, you owe them an apology. And you have absolutely no morals or ethics, and you should probably resign. And I don't mean to be like, I know people expect me to be a jerk on the show sometimes or be candid, and that's kind of my brand. But I'm truly unbelievably shocked that a person could lie and fight the truth like this and not resign and live with themselves. And how Elizabeth Holmes goes to bed at night and puts her head on the pillow and says, I'm helping the world, unless she has the secret cure for cancer that she was given by Satan himself. And he said, like, you can show everybody the cure to cancer on the January 1st, 2017, but until then, you have to just fight everybody off. Unless that happens, what a disgrace of a leader to attack the press and then have to restate all those tests. She should be you have to take ownership of your mistakes. Even Nick Denton, the supervillain of supervillains, the Darth Vader of Darth Vaders, took the CFO story down and disavowed it. He took ownership of their bad behavior in this crisis.
Yeah, the PR strategy has been insane. But, I think the corollary we should be saying is, and obviously I have a super vested interest in this, but it's my competitor. We should be celebrating the Wall Street Journal. They carried themselves very well, faced a ton of criticism, even from like mainstream technologists, people on Twitter, and I don't think they've had any corrections. They've written perfect, airtight stories.
Yeah.
And people didn't believe them right away.
How did they not get a Pulitzer?
I was shocked too.
Somebody has to go to Pulitzer headquarters and literally.
I don't feel like business journalism, it gets a lot of Pulitzers.
It is they're making a movie out of it before the story's ended.
Right.
Jennifer Lawrence is going to play.
Aren't there other actresses? Is she the only one left?
I think she's going to, I do think that she is going to play the glossy-eyed, like.
I think she could do
absolutely.
She'll do a great job. I'm just curious,
awkward.
Though, is she the last one left?
You know what the thing is? She's the complete package, like in a way that like Leo is and stuff like that. Like actually can act, has range, is attractive, and just a good package for doing that. I think she's going to be amazing. I can't wait to see that movie.
It's a fun character, especially the public like persona versus whatever. I don't really know her private persona, but it'd be interesting because she's so on stage, so. Very jargony and very hard to penetrate, right? I don't know. It'll be an interesting character.
Yeah, you have to wonder, like, is she crawled up in a ball at home crying over this, or is she absolutely delusional and like a samurai who just thinks that she's done nothing wrong?
I have no idea.
I think these are just things that we don't know.
Right. it's a bizarre state of affairs.
Earlier when we said we didn't really report on or comment on rumors, well, we're right back there.
We're right back there. I know. I just like on a human level. I always, there are human beings at the end of the day. I mean, when we talk about the Gawker story, when we talk about the back and forth that Jessica and I have, we're all humans, right? And I have. I don't know, maybe it's just because I have kids now and I have great empathy for people, I think. I actually feel very sorry for Peter and Nick Denton, and even Owen to a lesser degree, in that they're involved in this disgusting, crazy battle when they could all be moving on in their lives and, maybe doing more productive things. But in this case with Theranos, it's hard to feel bad for her when she risked other people's health for her own glory and magazine covers and delusion that she was Steve Jobs. Okay, moving on to actual real companies that provide real value and make actual revenue. Microsoft has bought LinkedIn in a pretty surprising acquisition for $26.2 billion. It's the largest acquisition in Microsoft's history. I believe the other larger one would be Nokia. And Jeff Weiner will stay on as CEO. They're going to run it as its own entity in a way similar to Instagram or WhatsApp or Skype or other great acquisitions of late, YouTube, that have not been screwed up by the acquiring company. We seem to have gotten acquiring correct. They hope that it revitalizes Microsoft and renews the decelerating LinkedIn growth. LinkedIn stock, of course, tumbled from $269 in February of 2015 to $100 in 2016. We had that shocking day when they put out news that their growth was slowing and they lost some huge part of their value in just a single day. And they think it's going to connect Office for meetings, give Cortana data, lynda.com doing videos and software. Salesforce, according to Eric's article in Bloomberg, was set to be a rival suitor.
It was a rival suitor.
It was a rival suitor, yeah. And Mark Andreessen is saying, get prepared for a large amount of M&A, including non-traditional companies shopping. And Steve Case echoes that. And as an angel investor, I echo that as well. All my companies are going to get bought for large sums of money. It is funny when...
Heard it here first.
No, it's pretty funny. Like every time now that I'm on the other side, I'm always like, when an investor tells you they think it's going to be an M&A bonanza, it's for a reason. We own stock in private companies.
Right.
That's good for us. But I do actually agree with it. Eric, you had that story. Tell us about the Salesforce bid and how close they came to owning it. How did that go down?
Well, first I'll just say, neither Katie or I cover public companies sort of generally anymore, right? You're mostly covering private companies. But this is even I'm like, this is the biggest scoop that didn't happen. The idea that they kept the purchase of LinkedIn quiet is agonizing, right? I don't know. It's amazing nobody broke it. It's such a crazy story. And then,
the largest acquisition ever, yeah.
And then to find out there was a bidding war, and that Salesforce was also trying to buy LinkedIn, just sort of made it even more frustrating and crazy. I mean, the banks knew about it. How did this not get out?
Or that LinkedIn was so clever because, according to your story, they lined Salesforce up as a suitor first, and then went to Microsoft and said, just by the way, we might be purchased by somebody else, and managed to get $26 billion is so much money.
What do you think the
I think people will
Salesforce
argue
bid was?
Less.
We
$5 billion less, $10 billion less?
I think it was sizable, but if I could report it, I would.
But they got outbid. And I do wonder if down the road we won't look at this deal and think this was way overpriced. This is a crazy amount to pay.
I'm not an expert in valuation of public companies. Hard for me to say. I think the synergies are big. I mean, and I agree with the general sentiment that, the big companies are going to get bigger. I mean, Yuri Milner at the Bloomberg Tech Conference, that was basically his thesis, that big technology companies are going to consume more of the value. And I think that's right. And the value of a social graph is enormous. And Facebook is up, up, up. And if I'm Microsoft, LinkedIn is the closest thing I can get. Not screw Twitter. LinkedIn is valuable and is a product that could be greatly improved.
And people pay for the product. And it's sort of, there's all of this. People are so worried about Slack, like Slack for the enterprise. This is the big threat. Slack doesn't have that much functionality, I'm just going to say, even though I really think it's lovely and I love the commercials. The animals are so cute. And Stuart does seem like a nice person.
There's a lot to love with Slack. Lot to love.
But, trying to find things in Slack, trying to organize things in Slack, trying to go back in time in Slack, right. It's all impossible. So if Microsoft can somehow create a huge social network for enterprise where people can talk, see one another, combine ID with messaging, with email, that's a great idea. It's just about execution. I think I have AOL Time Warner PTSD, where it was like, well, that was a great idea too. Like, why not combine publishing and video with this huge technology company and huge technology platform, which we're still trying to do.
And there's so much room for improvement.
It is execution, though, that makes people very nervous.
Like, I remember last Fortune Brainstorm, Reid Hoffman was on stage, and he got all the questions, and finally he was going to the audience, and this audience member gives this long-winded explanation how Craigslist has terrible product design, but it works really well for them. And he turns to Reid and says, "Is that your strategy?" And Reid was so mad, because it's like the guy was basically like, LinkedIn, the design is so bad, maybe this is on purpose. And obviously he was like, no, that's not the plan. And I do think, Microsoft could improve it a lot, connect it into its products, and there's a lot of room for growth.
Say what you will about Microsoft, they have made and acquired some gorgeous products. Outlook for iOS is the best email calendar client in my mind. I use it. Sunrise was my previous favorite. They bought that, sunset it, so to speak, and incorporated it into Outlook. And Wunderlist is a wonderful product for task management. That was bought by them and not screwed up and left alone.
And Minecraft, of course, has been a genius acquisition.
Genius acquisition, left alone, printing money. So Microsoft seems to be very good under Satya of Nadella, not screwing things up. And can you imagine if you went to the the information page on LinkedIn or the inside.com page, and you see there's 20 employees or 30 employees or 10, and it said, click here to chat. Mm-hmm. Or click here to chat with the employees or customer service. And you click it, and on LinkedIn, all of a sudden you're dumped into the inside.com or the information or the local restaurant or whatever business it is chat room. Or you click on somebody's profile, and instead of email, it says chat. And the person gets an alert and says, would you like to chat with Eric from Bloomberg? He wants to talk to you about a story. Or would you like to talk to Katie? She is, selling widgets, whatever it is.
I mean, I think Stephen Ellis wrote this in the information, but, in its effort to compete with Salesforce, I think this will be sort of extremely important. I think that, that's clearly why Salesforce was interested. This is a good sales channel, and I think LinkedIn, hasn't figured it out yet, so there's a big opportunity.
The namespace is so brilliant. If you think about what Facebook Connect has done for Facebook, they have perfect information on what apps are working and not. In fact, I know that the company said it saw adjusted first quarter earnings of 74 cents on $861 million in revenue. So if they had first quarter revenue of $861 million, they were at $3 or $4 million in yearly revenue. If they're at $3.5 billion in yearly revenue looking forward, 26 is 7 or 8 times revenue. So that's a generous price. But if you look at YouTube, $1.6 billion they paid for it. People thought that was a stupid acquisition as a standalone company. They're making probably $10 billion now. They would be worth 7, 8, 9, 10 times their top line revenue. That would make them a $70 to $100 billion public company. So I think it's more YouTube than.
I think so.
Then I don't know what's a bad acquisition, Nokia or Motorola. All bad acquisitions where they wrote off a lot.
Google would take issue with that.
Well, they got the patents, so that was good.
Right.
But you can afford. Also, you can afford to make mistakes. I think one of the things this highlights is that Microsoft is back in a major way.
Yeah.
They're making great product again. I see people with this goddamn Surface constantly, like business dudes, like sales executives, like love this, and like people from corporate places, like they issue them, I guess, at corporate places. People love the Surface, so they missed mobile. Nobody wants their mobile operating system, but people like the Surface. And you know what I do? I like to walk up and down when I'm on a plane. I walk up and down the aisles, and I look at what devices people are using, and I am seeing a ton of iPad Pros, and I'm seeing a ton of Surface. I think that this tablet with a keyboard has won the day. Yeah. What do you guys use? You guys all use MacBook Airs?
Of course, because I need to type.
I know I have the MacBook Air for that too, but what do you use? MacBook Air?
What
does your boss give you?
Eric has a ThinkPad.
They give you a ThinkPad?
Yeah, no, they give me. I think
they
it's
issued
Lenovo.
you a ThinkPad.
They have like. I can get a Mac. I have to decide whether I want to fight
You're
for a Mac or not.
You're so ashamed of using a Lenovo. You can't just say it.
I think that's what it is. I'm not. It's in a desk drawer at the moment.
So you basically were issued a Lenovo.
I use my desktop PC with the terminal on it. It works very well.
He uses a Bloomberg terminal.
Do they teach you how to use the Bloomberg terminal?
Yeah, it's a huge. I mean, it is an amazing product. Yeah.
I miss my Bloomberg terminal. And my healthcare benefits. But I miss my Bloomberg.
And the fish tank. I was over at your office.
Yeah, we have stingrays in the new Montgomery office.
I was over there recently, and I was talking to some folks over there, and I was like, oh, still fish tanks. What a beautiful office you guys have over there.
Everyone, yeah.
All right, let's go to the lightning round.
I'm not ashamed to admit it. Bloomberg.
You were
good taste.
Katie and I think. You'd think he's a little ashamed of that level.
Of the Lenovo? For sure.
For sure.
The laptop, sure.
The laptop, no.
The trackpad's not working really well right now. It's like,
Eric.
I'm basically in denial about how I have to replace my corporate laptop, and I just haven't gone through the bureaucratic
Harvard
procedure
Eric.
to do it. Yes. Oh, God.
Harvard Eric.
I've gone beyond that now.
You are now Bloomberg Eric.
Yeah.
That is an incredible moniker for you. See,
a new sort of like corporate brand for me.
We don't say New York Times Katie, because it's obvious she should be at a place like the New York Times.
I'm just
you, Eric. We're all kind of shocked that you made it to Bloomberg. We're like, Bloomberg, Eric. It's incredible.
Thank you. I'll take it as a compliment.
It's like saying Sequoia Jason. When I was...
Is that what you say to people?
Nick Denton in a piece. Nick Denton did a piece.
Yeah.
See, what I liked about when Nick Denton was a writer was he actually knew exactly how to thread the needle with Gawker and Valleywag, which is for every time you hit somebody twice, you build them up once.
Right.
He was the master of that. So they would beat me up like crazy. I mean, they basically called me a racist on the site because I said, I believe anybody in the world can go on the internet now and learn any skill, and that anybody's going to be able to rise themselves up from their bootstraps, and it's going to be wonderful for society. I think we're going to eventually live in a post-race world where people are able to get where they want. I think that's what we're headed towards. And they're like, you're a racist. I was just like, I'm an optimist, but okay.
Sure.
But what he would always do is he would always give me like some props for something. And when Sequoia invested in Mahalo, which is now Inside, they put Sequoia anoints Calacanis.
I love it.
It was like such a great piece where he like begrudgingly was like, this is a major moment for the kid from Brooklyn who sold weblog saying to now be associated with the #1 venture capital firm in Silicon Valley and blah, 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 blah.
Can I make a point on that? I mean, I think...
Which made me always feel okay about it, because it was like when they did smack me down, but I thought the racism stuff was just so false and so link baity, and it's also followed me around a little bit.
Yeah. Like
Complex wrote me as like one of the top 10 racists on the internet, and I was like,
how could you possibly compete with all those other racists?
And I'm like,
I highly doubt you're one of the
top 10.
Maybe
10 million, maybe.
Top, yeah.
I don't know, like maybe a little racist. I don't know. It's just a little bit weird.
Maybe this is naive, but I think, to sort of the messaging people out in the world, like PR people, like Gawker was able to create new characters in Silicon Valley in a way I think the rest of us aren't as good at, right? Like what you're saying is they would build you up, they'd tear you down. You sort of became an interesting person.
It was reality TV. They called
treated everybody like you were in a Jane Austen novel, basically, which that's not our job. We're business reporters. We're reporting on businesses.
As I told Nick when we had lunch, we have lunch every couple of years, and we're kind of friends now. I actually have an affinity for him, the good Nick, not the bad Nick. And I said, we're just kind of having this like old warrior, like retired NBA player kind of like lunch. It's like Elijah Wan and Patrick Ewing talking about basketball days. Like, it's kind of like we can barely walk.
Your self-characterizations are
can barely walk. One person. And so we're having this kind of like collegial, like talking about the old days lunch. And I was like, I kind of miss being relevant. Like, you guys never beat me up anymore. It's just like, is there nothing you can come up with? Like,
can this be the vine of the whole session, or?
I was just like, no, it was just funny. We kind of went back and forth about how missing having each other as competitors.
Right.
Because when we competed, it was bare knuckled. Like, I took Peter Rojas off of him. People know the story. You don't know the story? Oh, so Peter Rojas was working for Denton.
Okay.
I'm going to end on this because it's one of the greatest stories of all time. So I decided I'm going to do a blogging network.
Right.
So I go to Nick. I say, I want to build a business-to-business blogging network. It won't compete with what you're doing. It's going to be B2B.
Okay.
My idea is it will replace trade publications. So just like Rafat, who worked for me, he's doing paid content. I want to do that for like 20 categories, maybe 100 someday. And just let the writers write whatever they want with no editor. Just get good writers. And we have lunch. It was very collegial. And then he writes, Jason coming into the blog business is the death of the blog business. He is a snake oil salesman. This is after having the nicest lunch you ever had. He bought me lunch in Soho. It's 3-hour lunch. It was amazing.
And you still speak fondly of him. It's amazing.
It's sort of like in a way, it's like a brother. Like it's kind of like Loki and Thor. Is back to the Patrick Ewing thing. It's like a Loki Thor kind of thing. It's kind of like a Captain America and Bucky kind of thing.
It's sort of a show in search of a metaphor, I think.
It's kind of like, it's got like a little homoerotic kind of underpinnings in a way. But anyway, putting that aside. So he does this to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, you melon farmer. Like, we just had lunch and you just like, we left the lunch and the next day this comes up. And I was like, I am going to beat his ass. I am going to knock him out like for that. So I go to Elizabeth Spears or Spires? Spires. I go to Elizabeth Spires. Elizabeth, I'll give you 50% ownership in a Gawker killer. I'll give you a MacBook Air, brand new. And whatever he's paying you, I'll double. He was paying her $2,000 a month. I said, I'll give you $4,000 a month, a new laptop, because the Air had just come out. Steve Jobs just held it up out of the manila envelope. And I'll give you 50% ownership. She goes, no, I want to be a magazine writer. I'm going to New York Magazine. Thank you, though. And I was like, Elizabeth, you're the #1 blogger in the world. That's the stupidest thing you could ever do. You'll make millions of dollars if you do this with me. Trust me. She's like, no, not interested. And I don't think she liked me anyway. I was too crass. So then I was talking to Sheni Jardin of Boing Boing, who worked for me at the Silicon Valley Reporter days as well, and she was doing Boing Boing, and I was asking her for advice. She goes, you should talk to that guy, Peter, who's doing this thing, Gizmodo. I said, what's Gizmodo? You didn't see Gizmodo? It launched last week. So I go talk to Peter. I said, Peter, I'll give you this, and this amount of ownership. Peter's like, okay, let's have sushi. So I took him to Jewel Baku, which is the best sushi in New York. Well, no, I know how to recruit. So I take him to Jewel Baku. I tell the chef, money's not an object, blow it out. They start bringing out the omakase. He doesn't eat fish. He's a vegan.
Oh, my God.
I go, Jack, the guy who owns this, Jack, you got to help me out here. This guy's a vegan. I'm trying to land this deal. He goes, I'll be right back. He runs out to the corner grocery, buys a bunch of vegetables, comes back and makes vegetable sushi for Peter Rojas and his lovely wife, Jill Fehrenbacher. And so Peter agrees to the deal. He goes, but, I have to do it after this date because Nick is going on vacation. He's going to Brazil for Rio or Carnival or something. He's actually going with Bjork is going and all these people are going. It's going to be like this really hip thing. I said, oh, really? Tell me more. He goes, yeah, he's going to, I said, when is he leaving? Sunday. I said, what time is his flight? He goes, I don't know. I said, okay, tell him you want to meet with him for coffee on Sunday. Find out what time the flight is. See if you can get a meeting before the flight so we'll ruin his vacation. Because Peter was absolutely feeling spurned by Nick, who had promised him equity. And then as the thing grew, he reneged that promise and refused to give Peter equity. Nick is a bit Machiavellian like that. But he was up against an even more Machiavellian character. So I said to Peter,
who happens to be telling this story.
Exactly. So I said to Peter,
The winners get to write history.
so I say, no, he'll trust me. He wrote a blog post about this, about how he got shafted. So Peter finds out what time he's going. I said, don't meet with him for coffee. I want you to email him while he's on the plane that you resigned, effective immediately. And then Monday we start. He lands to Peter resigning. We create Engadget. Engadget was a flagship product. We sold the company 18 months later for $30 million. Peter made millions of dollars, did very well for himself.
Oh, wow.
I did great.
I didn't realize this.
Everybody did great. Peter became independently wealthy.
And now Den's in bankruptcy,
And now Denton's in bankruptcy. But you know what? In all of that, Denton's going to make, I predict Denton will make $30 million on the sale. He'll still get a third of it, I think.
As long as they win on appeal.
They're going to settle for $35 million. They will, this is my guess.
Okay.
Terry Bologna gets $30 million. Nick Denton agrees to apologize to Peter Thiel. Does not go with the sale. There's some sort of agreement that he's not going to relaunch Gawker and then start his holy war against Peter again as rebuttal or something like that. And then Peter agrees to back down and stand down on all the lawsuits and get his money back.
I don't believe that.
I think the real moral of the story, though, is that Elizabeth Spires would not be bought with a MacBook Air, but that Eric Newcomer will be bought with a MacBook Air. So you better after the show
Bloomberg is going to get me a MacBook Air. Don't worry. No, it's my apathy towards.
I'm excited to see you working for Jason, Eric.
No, you know what? I don't. Now I just. I don't have the edge I had. I don't have it anymore. I don't. You know what?
I can't get those MacBooks like you
I don't
used
have
to.
the killer instinct that I had back then. I literally.
Sad?
No, it's not sad. Actually, I'll tell you.
It's good.
It's actually a really good thing. Actually, I think if you live with that much, if you live like a samurai, you will die like a samurai. Which is you're going to die by the sword. I want to die an old man with my daughters and my wife and my bulldogs, in a wheat field. Like Maximus should have in Gladiator.
That's great.
I want to just run my hands down the wheat field. You know what I'm saying?
I can envision the scene in the movie.
Yeah, it's like The Godfather where he's surrounded by his family.
That's all I want. Literally, I want to die at 90 around my daughters and my granddaughters, picking tomatoes and making tomato sauce. I don't want to be fighting with everybody my whole life. I did it for 10 years. It's exhausting. And I think that's what Nick and Peter have to realize is that at the end of the day, we're all going to die. We're all going to become...
Not Peter.
No, he's going to die. And if you spend another 10 years of your life fighting this kind of stuff, it's going to wind up meaning nothing. It's going to wind up meaning nothing in the course of history. I mean, it's one thing to make a point. I understand it. It's another thing to protect yourself if you're bullied. But at a certain point, you cannot be in a holy war forever like this. You cannot be a warrior forever, or else you will die by the sword.
If you're trying to maximize narrative, this suit is the craziest thing. It's just an amazing story. I think we're going to be talking about this you're going to talk about it every show.
No, it's getting a little old. But yes, it is it's one of the greatest stories ever sold. Katie, will Twitter get bought or sold? What's going to happen to Twitter? Is Jack doing a good job over there? It feels like they're going sideways.
Oh, wow. So hopefully Twitter gets acquired. That's my hope. It's my sincere hope for Twitter.
It's kind of going sideways, right? On a product basis, do you use it more, less, or the same?
So I deleted the Twitter app from my phone.
Was it because you were addicted or because you felt it was not a great conversation? Why?
Because I felt it was just like the cesspool. And I don't know if it's because of the election cycle or what. But so when I go to the office and I'm on my laptop, I have Twitter up so I can see what people are sharing for stories. And I have a very tiny list of people I actually follow right now just for stories, mostly journalists and tech people. But then when I'm not at work, I just really don't have it. It just became too horrible.
It's such a distraction from work. I mean, our good friend swore it off so he can write stories. You know what I mean? And
I took 100 days. I said I was going to take 100 days off social media. I wound up doing 50 because I just had my twin daughters were born, and I was like, I just want to be present.
Yeah.
And so I literally took it off my phone.
Didn't it feel great?
Incredible.
Oh, yeah.
And people are like, "You're not on it." I'm like, producer Jackie is tweeting the show, not me. I'm not this secret. Spoiler alert. People who are have 250,000 followers have people doing some of their social media, not the stuff I write. That's obviously personal.
And for me, I mean, for journalists, obviously, we have to build our brands and all that. But I started a newsletter, which
Incredible.
is now I get to actually sort of write thoughtful things instead of 140 character bursts, and I send them. That I subscribed to a bunch of people. Now it's pinned to my tweets, so please subscribe to my tiny letter. And
It's great.
that's
Your
a
tiny
much
letter's
better.
good.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
I feel like in your tiny letter, how do I say this?
No, I want feedback.
I would say your journalism is obviously solid. You wouldn't have the track record you do, but you are starting to find a voice.
Yeah.
That is who you are and unique.
Right.
That journalism can't allow for because you
Right.
can't inject yourself into the story.
Right.
And so I think the more personal you can be on email, the better.
That's the goal. I agree 100%.
And it's like actually been kind of nice to sort of see what you choose as your focus in the email newsletter, right? Like, because that is the ultimate test. Like, what we choose to focus on in this life speaks volumes for who we are.
I agree 100%.
And when you're a journalist, you're assigned and you're given a beat. But
well, we get some choice, but yeah, less of a conversational tone, certainly.
Yeah. Do you have your own personal email newsletter yet?
No, I probably won't be doing that. I'll just be reading Eric's.
I just make sure to put Katie
which
in.
you should.
It's like good stories plus stories my friends wrote, which are always good,
Eric, you wrote about just lightning round. Airbnb added another $1 billion to their war chest. Uber obviously is doing some $2 billion.
Credit line, debt
A
facility.
credit line. So, and then Uber has this $2 billion high yield debt. Why are these debt things? These
I actually
occurring, do you think?
don't have a perfect answer yet. It's something I want to report out more. I mean,
They're doing it because they can?
Yeah, doing it because cheap debt, and then maybe they want to buy things.
It doesn't change their valuation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's basically free money.
It's sort of the banks know they need a good relationship with us, so we have tons of leverage.
But rates still seem to be really low on things like leverage loans. And to Eric's point, if you're going to, do a leverage loan, why not use that as an you can use that to acquire companies, because the idea is that the acquisition that you make will generate more cash than the payment that you have to make on the debt. Very simply put.
I obviously don't speak for Uber, and I don't have any insight into it, but I will say that when companies are doing really well, these credit facilities become available,
Yep.
and Amazon and Apple use them extensively to do share buybacks. Apple took tons and tons of bonds or loans out.
Yeah, you've sold any
buybacks.
shares?
I'm not allowed to talk about any of my
Will you
holdings
say
in
that
Uber.
you've sold? Can you say that you've sold any shares of Uber?
I can't speak about my holdings in the Uber Corporation. If I could or not, even if I did, I couldn't say. And if I didn't, I couldn't say.
Reported.
I think we should. Yeah, exactly. We need Gawker on this.
say.
I had Bill Maris on the stage at Bloomberg Tech, and he said they hadn't sold any. But I do think we need to ask every Uber investor now, you sold any?
Like basically there's when you own equity in these companies, people read into anything you do, and it becomes a headline. And so it's sort of like Elon not wanting to touch these other, whatever, Trump or Hillary or the election. It's like, even me touching, like, would I sell or would I not sell?
What's he care about that? Yeah, anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so, but I mean, listen, I think.
But it's $68 billion. It's not a criticism of Uber if you wanted to sell,
if I could
a huge markup in your stock.
If my parents came to me and said, and my brothers came to me and said, we have $10,000 sitting here, should we buy Uber shares at the current valuation? I would say yes.
Wow.
Yes. I would literally tell my mom to take $10,000 and put it into Uber at this valuation. Only
even
because,
if they needed a return
and I would say
in 5 years, or
yeah, absolutely. If you say 5-year window, I say absolutely.
What?
You know why?
No.
Give a corrective to this. What are you saying?
No,
The reason I say that is I would say the same thing about
let Katie
Airbnb.
respond.
No,
go ahead.
No.
Was there something there?
I was just, we're getting really specific. So it's like, well, what about with a 5-year timeline? Well, what about with a 3-year timeline with an option to renew? It's like, all right, guys.
Too insider? Or?
Well, this is how Eric gets his information. This is why I never talk to. Now you understand why I never talk to journalists on the phone, because. And the better the journalist, like the less chance I will actually talk on the phone with you. I just say, email me the questions, because I know how to get people to answer questions and how to get non-answers. And it's like,
I'm not one of these people who runs a story like, oh, he didn't say.
No. I mean, here's the thing. I think that once a company gets escape velocity, like Airbnb has or Uber has, even Twitter to a certain extent, it's like there's a certain escape velocity where the product's not going to go away. And even if it does deprecate, like Yahoo has or AOL has, deprecation after critical mass takes a decade.
It takes so long.
Like AOL took a decade to be sold for $2 billion. Yahoo's took 15 years of deprecation to sell for $3 billion, or whatever it's going to sell for. So these things take a long time, and while they're deprecating, if they were deprecating, none of those companies are deprecating. They're all going up. You could argue maybe we hit peak Twitter this year, right? It's still growing. It's not growing fast, but it's still growing. So it's not peaked yet. But even if Twitter started deprecating, what would it take? 10 years?
Oh, forever.
Forever.
We would be stuck with it forever. I think with the big fundraising, the one way to look at it is that this is it's sort of a culling. People were financing anything. They were investing in anything over the last few years because it was like, why not? And now I think that there's a flight to quality. So investors are saying, well, we've identified the handful of companies we actually think are going to work, and we're going to put all of our chips there, and everything else can sort of fall
That's
away
correct.
and hopefully be acquired.
I think that's correct. And what you'll see is a lot of other companies that maybe weren't given that benefit of the doubt will actually get focused and move themselves into that bucket. So Instacart comes to mind, where I think from what I heard, like people were like pretty disenfranchised with that business concept.
That was always, if you asked VCs what business they would short, Instacart was always their
Always
first
the answer. And then here's the thing. They increased the monthly fee and they increased the delivery charge. And my wife came to me and was like, hey, we have to make a decision on this. It's, instead of $6 a month, it's 10 or whatever. I don't know what the exact details are. And I was like, well, what do you want to do? And she's like, it's essential. And I was like, great. So I think for a lot of people, like once the behavior shifts, they see the value in it. And just like Amazon was able to increase the cost of Prime from $40 a year to it's $100, I think now, over 6 years, it's gone up 2.5 times. I think like Instacart's going to actually tip over and make it into that other group.
I mean, I shouldn't show my hand with this on your show, but I do think the question is just the Whole Foods relationship is that whole company at this point.
It is a significant piece of it. And that I also think Google is going to get out of this, the Google Shopping Express. How long?
Well, they lost their top guy to Uber a while ago.
They did. And it's also like, what exactly is the point of that? They're not an e-commerce company. Like what?
I hate going to Target, and I love getting it from Google, but I'm
Google
not a
Shopping
Prime
Express
user.
is unbelievable.
Right,
It's
but I have no idea what their market. I mean, it's probably a hard business.
Are they really going to compete against Amazon? Are they just doing that to stick it to Amazon a bit or show them that they could? I don't get it.
Or did they just want people to sign up and get the credit card data? Did they want the user ID information? I have no idea.
I don't know.
It's also, I guess, an experiment. What do you both think about Larry Page investing in 2 flying car companies reportedly and putting them at odds with each other?
Bloomberg Business Week, my boss, Brad Stone, Ashley Vance. Great story. Everybody should read it.
What is your take on that? Why is Larry Page doing a moonshot outside of the moonshot company that he founded with his own personal money? Is it too moonshotty? Is it a Mars shot?
Well, I think that's what I think Bill Maris would say. Yeah, it's just the time horizons on that return is so long that it doesn't really make sense for Google Ventures. And then, I think Jessica, in the information argued that why isn't it an X project? But I think I disagree with her. I think it's fine if he wants to do his own crazy bets. Like he's bored. Why not? Like he has so much money. Why
I don't feel that he went into this to run a big advertising company, which is essentially what he does. So if he wants to do something that's a little bit more fun than running a huge advertising company, let the man do it.
A huge advertising company that feels like it has a very serious competitor in Facebook's ad network. Facebook's catching up, isn't it, Katie?
Yes.
Is it going to catch up to Google? Will they have the same revenue at some point? Will people pick Facebook over Google? Are they picking Google?
If nothing changes and they stay on their current trajectories, I'm sure Facebook would catch up to Google. My hope and assumption is that Google will change course and understand that they need to do more in video, that they need to understand live, that they need to become more embedded with the way that people live day to day outside of their laptops.
Yeah, but Facebook, their culture is great. Everything, that company is just doing so well,
Are you
right?
only saying that because you once worked for somebody who
owned Facebook shares? Who's been on Facebook shares?
Well, we already disclosed it, right? Disclosure. We already talked about it at length.
It's like 3 levels removed. Was your salary at some time?
But I do have a unique sense of their culture because I was close to people that worked, at Facebook, and so I know what they're like. And
what are they like?
Facebook does have a great culture. They get things done.
They're willing to
GSD culture.
They're willing to kill the product, change the product as needed to grow the product. They
steal
accept
and copy any idea with zero remorse. That's, I think, probably one of their biggest strengths.
And buy,
And then do a better
make
job.
huge
And do a better
acquisitions,
job,
and yeah.
Like, when's the last time you used, what is it, Meerscope?
Neither.
Meerscope?
Meerscope? Paracat? Paracat. Meerscope?
Yeah, I think I only use them walking around San
Jackie,
Francisco board ahead
we
of
know
going
the
to
names,
South by
Jackie. We're making a
Southwest.
joke. We're combining Periscope and Meerkat. Jackie produced every award we produce. Jackie's like, it's Meerkat. I'm like, Jackie, we're making a joke. Periscope plus Meerkat equals Paracat. Or Meriscope. Or I don't know. Who knows? All right, listen, this has been an amazing.
I was going to walk out. Do I not get to?
You. God,
I have a meeting. I need to go.
And just one more time. I think Jessica Lesson is tremendous, and I don't. Do you think I'm supposed to apologize? Was I too hard in that segment? Was it too heated?
I think
I'm willing to
tough.
apologize.
She's tough, and honestly, that's a private conversation between you two. And I don't think Eric and I should be. I don't think Eric and I should be like.
But here's what's happened. We have not talked, but we have both been favoriting.
You're gonna wage a 10-year secret war against the information.
No.
My God.
The opposite. We have been sending subtle overtures to each other through Twitter's hearts.
From the man who's like, I deleted Twitter. And
no, I'm back on. I'm back on full force. I had to come
off. Oh, you came back?
Just off my phone.
You know what the problem was? I had to come back because I had 2 or 3 of my portfolio companies. Like one of them needed me to come in and give air cover, which is sort of my
role.
Kind of my role. Like something goes wrong at one of my companies and they're getting beat up and they're just like, they put up the bat signal and then I come over the top and I'm like, tweet storm.
You say a bunch of racist stuff so people pay attention
I'm just
to that. Like, look over here.
If you can't learn to code, it's because you're stupid and don't, like. No, but I'll tell you my biggest mistake.
He's giving you a moment to walk off if you want. That's why we're still going here.
Is I engaged the crazy fringe social justice warrior crowd. And just like the crazy right crowd, the second you engage them, like if you get involved with either Milo Yiannopoulos crowd or the Shanley crowd, your whole life becomes so disgustingly insane that it just makes Twitter unbearable.
Yeah.
It's just unbearable because...
Even when you're not engaged, you're just watching it. It's like, ugh.
Nobody wins the Twitter fight. This is a lesson I haven't learned, but I try to remind myself of. My colleagues are like, just don't tweet. How about just don't get involved.
So here's what we're doing. We've been going back and forth. And everybody thinks we had this like incredibly like... She's never coming on the show again.
I think Jessica's more professional than that.
Of course.
I didn't know that this show is going to become like our old colleagues come and like analyze a weird.
I knew actually you worked in information. I forgot that you did, Katie. But anyway, I just also wanted to make sure people who listen to the show, because some people listen to the show and they're not on Twitter and seeing the back and forth. I always like to have that continuity to make sure people don't think that.
Don't worry, we're getting faves.
I'm upset. But we started faving tweets about the incident. So she started, and they're not faves with their hearts.
I'm done.
I don't want to sound like my mom here.
So
I really feel like this is a conversation for the two of you to work everything out.
No. First we have to fave.
Eric and I can add really.
First we have to like, and then we can break bread. And actually, if you want to talk about breaking bread, you'll never guess. You'll never guess who I'm having. Here we go. I'll give you 2 guesses each. Guess who I'm having a sit down with at 3:00 today. And we're going to go have something to eat and have a little, this is going to blow your mind. We're having a sit. Me and another high-profile person after a high-profile battle. High-profile battle. We're going to have a sit down. Person reached out. We're going to have a little sit, talk, maybe work out some differences.
Arrington?
Yeah, that was.
No, that's not happening in this lifetime.
That was my guess.
That's definitely not happening in this life. If you steal from me, it's never. It's. If you take food out of my kids'
just
mouths,
tell us.
No. You get 2 choices. Whoever I've been in a fight with, whoever I had a disagreement with in the last year. It's only like one person.
I don't know.
All right, that's it.
Who is it?
I'm not going to say. If you can't figure it out.
Kara. Who is it?
No, Kara and I are good friends. We're great friends. There's only
Come on.
one other person. Let me see if anybody on the Twitter.
We're being punished for not paying more attention to Jason.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not like, where's my like Jason baseball card? Like, he's rivals with like.
No, it's not necessarily like rivals, but we had a little back and forth. The person.
Is this an investor or a media
female?
person? Like,
okay, good. I'll give you 3 questions. It was
male or female?
Male.
Male. Okay.
but this is Silicon Valley. What a wasted question. Sorry. Is that
Cis,
bad? Am I
white
not
male?
allowed to say that? That was a
it's a male.
criticism of Silicon Valley.
Fellow investor?
Yes.
Fellow investor. So, oh shit! I should have asked that question.
So that's your 2.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. See, thanks for giving
2
me
questions
some
for you,
cover
Eric.
for
Go
that.
ahead.
Jeez.
Okay.
Frequently discussed on the show. Frequently controversial figure, or somewhat controversial, or like a lot of back and forth on the Twitter with.
Mark Andreessen?
No.
Because he
Close.
blocked him.
Close.
Mark blocked him.
Close. No, Mark unblocked me.
Oh.
Actually, I had 3 Tracy
Who are the
Horowitz
Twitter
partners had blocked
brawlers?
me.
Keith?
Because I had Keith Raboy.
Yeah, I mean,
I like Keith Raboy. I'm friendly with Keith. Keith spoke at the event.
who else is? I'm just thinking of Twitter brawler people. Who else like?
Who is incredibly sensitive but gets into it nonetheless on Twitter? That's Mark, but it's very analogous to Mark, actually.
Hair, no hair.
An investor.
An investor.
I don't know. Come on. What firm?
Thank you. Yes.
That'll makes it easy. I'll just say this: he's involved in early stage.
Oh, it's what's his name? The guy at the other Uber investor.
No.
It's not Saka.
Sock and I are great friends. Sock and I go on vacation together.
I was getting into it. He does seem sensitive.
Sock and I are great friends.
Early stage.
Now we're like, how many people can we implicitly
I guess I gotta tell
suggest
you. I guess I gotta
ourselves?
tell you.
Samil?
I guess
No.
I got to tell you. You guys want me to tell you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Sam Altman and I are going to have lunch.
Oh, yeah, you do.
Sam.
I should have known that. You guys do fight a lot.
Well, here's the thing. The people who are the most similar, a lot of times, have the biggest fights. So Peter Thiel and Nick Denton, very similar in some ways. Powerful men, powerful gay men, outspoken, powerful gay men, powerful, outspoken gay men who think a certain way that is different than the majority of the other people on the planet, just unique thinkers. Then me and Arrington, bombastic editors of publication, writers, conference hosts, whatever.
Yeah.
And then Sam and I both run an incubator, both early
Right.
stage.
So where are you going to eat?
If I stay on the air, we're going to go. There's going to be 20 founders
Oh
there
my God.
to try to raise money and get into
You
Y
should do
Combinator.
the
to get
DJ
into-
Khaled fan Snapchat thing.
Oh, I should do. My price went up.
They just like
My
show
price
up.
went
And
I'm sitting here. What does he say? I'm scheming. I'm thinking about this.
I don't.
I'm plotting.
All I know is plotting. Definitely major
plotting.
key.
Major key. Major key. Make peace. No, he banned me from Y Combinator.
Yeah.
That whole thing that went down, and I was like,
Well,
Anyway.
Anyway.
Sam and I have old friends, so it's no big deal. But when,
Yeah, I hope it's as impressive a meal as the one that you served up to steal Nick Denton's employees.
Jubaku, good place. And is that still open in New York?
I don't know if it's still open.
That was the place for a moment in
It
time.
was the place, and then it was like the place for ladies who lunched and hedge
I
fund
didn't know they were open
wives.
for lunch. That's a whole different ball of wax. All right, listen. This has been amazing. Everybody follow Katie Brenner, Benner. I say Brenner, KT Benner on the Twitter, KTBENNER. And she, of course, is a reporter for the New York Times Tech, and they have their own Twitter handle at New York Times Tech. She does an amazing job. And I'll do my Donald Trump impersonation. We get the best guests, obviously. We have the wonderful, it's huge, the ratings, huge when Eric Newcomer's on, Eric Newcomer at Eric Newcomer. And there's my Bloomberg journalist.
And my tiny letter is also Eric Newcomer.
And Eric Newcomer is his title letter, and he covers Bloomberg,
If I'm
great
gonna come on, I'm gonna
publication.
self-promote a little bit.
Bloomberg, great publication. I've been featured in it many times. I've been on Bloomberg many times. That tells you.
We have not
great.
been banned from the press conferences, as far as I know.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Give it time.
Neither of you guys,
Who's going to be
right?
left? It's going to be Milo Yiannopoulos, who's going to. He's hilarious, by the way. I mean, I don't know if you guys follow at Nero on
I see
Twitter.
it.
Nope, don't follow.
It's worth following only because I think he's literally the greatest troll in the history of the term.
He's a heel. I mean, it's like like the professional wrestling metaphors are perfect for this.
He
whole
is
thing.
literally like a professional wrestler, like villain.
Yeah, he loves. I mean, he
It's just
says
all
villainy.
attention.
He's called Nero on Twitter.
Yes.
Like,
There is nothing here that is not what it seems.
Right.
But like he literally is engaging with Muslims on Twitter. And I'm like, by the way, like if you want to tweak the social justice warriors on the left, like, okay, fine, it's entertaining. You might want to look up like people who've tweaked radical, like ISIS type of like.
Can we walk
people
out?
have been.
Yeah.
People have been.
I'm gonna walk out.
No, look at the guy. Look at the filmmaker. The filmmaker in was it Sweden or Switzerland, Norway? Anyway, Van Gogh. Van Gogh was like murdered on the street because he, did some. Anyway,
all right.
My advice to Milo is like that's not the subject and the group of people you want to troll.
This is why sometimes we delete Twitter from our phones.
I honestly think this is like one of the biggest problems that Twitter has right now is that it's just so hard to have a meaningful dialogue on it when it used to be the place to go for meaning.
Or just a fun one.
It's so mean-spirited. This is why is there any solution to it, Katie?
So you were at Code. You saw Jack Dorsey and on stage with DeRay McKesson. What was so fascinating was that DeRay's responses were so much clearer
than Jack's.
I
didn't actually see the interview yet.
It was so when asked.
So he'll be the president of Twitter?
Hopefully they just hired DeRay and he comes and fixes the platform.
Did he have a specific fix that he think would be good? Well,
when he was basically, yes, Twitter needs a real policy here, and they need to examine the way that technology is used to be able to help curb some of the worst behaviors on the platform.
Yeah.
That said, he was also this is a First Amendment thing. People can say and do what they'd like, and they can be mean and they can argue, which I also agree with.
Yes.
But there's a difference between being mean and arguing and bombarding my colleague Jonathan on Twitter with so many hateful anti-Semitic messages that he just felt it was better for him to leave the platform.
Yeah. You have any thoughts on it? How to fix it, Eric?
I agree with Katie.
Yeah. I see. For me, I think they have to lean into if it's such an important platform that if they just had the verification check because you're both verified, I assume. We're all journalists here, so you're verified.
You're part of the club, right? Before I say only the people in the club should. The
only reason I bring it up is journalists are almost universally given a blue check mark, although Milo had his removed. When you have the check mark, you can look at your verified stream and just live on just the verified user stream and only interact with verified people, which sometimes is nice because you're who are the people who are verified? But you lose those other voices. But what I think they should do is if you want to become verified, you should be able to go through a process to be verified.
Real name sort of verification.
A real name verification.
Yeah.
So you could opt into it for $10 one-time fee, be verified, and we know it's your real name, we know who you are, and then everybody else on the platform can decide, I only want to see.
I like that actually.
And interact with only verified people. So verification.
As long as anybody can do it.
As long as anybody can do it. So Facebook this is how Facebook works. Except Facebook doesn't charge you for it. They figured out a way to do it where you rat out your friends who are using pseudonyms. So if somebody puts up a fake profile, eventually somebody rats it out. This is a fake profile. This is a troll profile. They get rid of it very quickly. And any profile that's been created that hasn't been on the system for so long kind of doesn't get past EdgeRank, whereas people who've been on the system and been verified and have enough friends in their graph.
I imagine this would be a growth disaster, though, because then people would prioritize this insular network, and it'd be hard to get new people. So I don't see the business doing it.
They're having troubles with growth anyway.
That is a problem, but maybe they could make it a slow process where you just apply, and then over time, if you have, let's say you have 20 verified people who are following you, you could become verified, right? Or you can become more quickly verified. So it could be almost PageRank, where you could have this ranking, and then you could say, just show me everything. So I want unverified Twitter. So there's verified Twitter and unverified. Unverified, you get to let in all those parody accounts. You let the trolls in. You let in the insanity. But verified Twitter lets you just rise above the noise, and I could only deal with people who are using their real name. Real name versus non-real name.
I agree. Sure. Real name is important.
The anonymity is a huge problem, for sure.
For sure. All right, listen, this has been incredible. Everybody follow Katie Benner. Everybody follow @Eric Newcomer. Thank you, 4-time Emmy-winning, award-winning producer Jackie, and thanks to our amazing partner Squarespace. Go to squarespace.com/twist, or use the program code TWIST for 10% off. And then for Design Crowd, it's designcrowd.com/twist, and you'll get $100 or save up to $100 on your next design project. We'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.